Hey guys, we have what is technically an ARC review today, but the book did come out last week. I'm a little bit behind again. I know that, but I'm trying to keep pace with the ARCs as I have them. Although the people behind this book might have wished that I had not finished this once we're done with this review. I have a feeling it's gonna get ranty up in here because I nearly rage quit this book so many times, and I didn't because, well, at one point I thought it was gonna get better, and then I knew it wasn't, and I just wanted to rage finish it because I knew the review would be a thing. So I finished it for you, so thank you, you're welcome. I don't know what the answer to this is, but oh my gosh, do I have so many feelings about this book. So the book in question is called For Never and Always by Helena Greer. This book, although it is not tagged as such on Goodreads, I realize now it is on Storygraph, is the second book in a so-called Seasons of Love series. There is a first book called Seasons of Love, and let me tell you something, if you have not read that book and you try to read this book, as it happened to me, you will not understand a good solid portion of what the heck is going on. Frustration number one, just right up there. But anyway, let me explain to you the plot as best you can understand it without having already read Seasons of Love. This is a second chance romance between Hannah and his name, he goes by either Levi or Blue. It's interchangeable, so if I do both, if I call him Levi Blue, they sometimes call him LB, it's a whole thing. But anyway, Hannah and Blue. Hannah and Blue kind of sort of grew up together at this place called Kerrigan's Christmas. And this is a place in the Adirondacks, and put a pin in that because boy do I have feelings about this setting. That is technically a Christmas spectacular. Now the hilarious thing is that they are all very, very Jewish, but it is a Christmas, like Christmas tree farm, and they have events and stuff like that. Blue grows up there because his parents are the handyman and chef there, but they are not related to the owner. Her name is Cass Kerrigan, and she is Hannah's aunt. Hannah's parents are documentarian filmmakers, so she's normally being dragged around the world against her will, following her parents wherever they go to work. And so her favorite times of the year are when she can go to Kerrigan's Christmas, hang out with her best friend Blue and her cousin Miriam, and finally have like a home base situation. Hannah and Blue have basically been in love with each other from the jump, even though it took them a little while to express their feelings to each other. And it has always been Hannah's dream to come back to Kerrigan's, to live there, finally have a home base, be with Blue, and turn Kerrigan's from something that is focused on Christmas to an all-year extravaganza. Blue, on the other hand, hates Kerrigan's. He hates everything that he stands for. Cass knows that he likes Hannah, does not want him to be with Hannah, and really doesn't treat him all that well. He's also coming to the realization as he's growing up that he is queer and is different from the people around him who make fun of him because he's different and likes to cook. And, you know, he dresses weird for a boy. And he just dreams and dreams and dreams of getting away, going anywhere, being a chef on a cruise ship or in another country or somewhere else. So needless to say, even though Hannah and Blue love each other and come to get together, their dreams are completely opposite. One wants to stay, one wants to go, and basically neither of them can survive the other thing. They don't want it. So needless to say, even though they do finally get together in their 20s, it's very explosive. They break up. Blue goes off to become somewhat famous in Australia on an Australian cooking show, and Hannah takes over the inn when Cass becomes ill and then passes away and turns it into the all-year extravaganza that she's always dreamed of. Some of that plot apparently happens in Seasons to Love. I don't know how much of it. I don't know what is in it. There is like a whole love story there between Miriam and her now girlfriend Noelle. It's a big part of this. I think for part of that, Cass may have been alive. I'm not sure. It is never explained. They expect you to know the answers to some of these things, and I don't, because I didn't read Seasons of Love because no one told me I had to. Anyway, The inciting incident for this book is that Cass has died, and she has basically left ownership of Kerrigan's in a four-way tie. She's left some to Noelle, Miriam, Hannah, and Blue. And so Blue is basically summoned back to Kerrigan's from Australia, where he's becoming somewhat famous, and told to give up his shares because he doesn't want them, he doesn't want to be there, whatever. And Blue says to Hannah, "You're the love of my life. I've always wanted to be with you, and I want you to give me the chance to get you back." Hannah says, "Our dreams are still diametrically opposed. I don't want this. It nearly broke me the first time." And Blue says, "Go on." I think they initially say like 3 to 5 dates. And if I can't convince you, then I'll leave. But he doesn't want to stay. So figure that one out. So first, let me just rant a little bit about the setting. This isn't a bad thing or a good thing. It's a weird thing. So the Kerrigan's itself is set in a place called Advent, New York, which is right in the Adirondacks next to Lake Placid, New York. I grew up 20 minutes away from Lake Placid, New York. So when they talk about going into Lake Placid or going to Bullwinkle's, I know exactly where they're going. And Advent is not a real place, but I am pretty sure I know the exact business that Kerrigan's Christmas is based on because I have been there, and the town that Advent has been there because I have been there. And it's weird. It's weird throughout the entire book to feel that uncanny valley feeling of like, I feel like I know where this is and what's happening, and I know when they talk about going to Bullwinkle's where they're going. It's weird. It's weird. And I was unsure of what to do with that the entire time. So when the book started, they were going into, Blue comes back, and there's a whole run of Jewish holidays that Hannah is throwing for her whole Rosenstein family, who like descend upon Kerrigan's all year and are here for the holidays. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not Jewish. I have Jewish friends, but I am not like up on Jewish tradition. I don't speak Hebrew or Yiddish, like any of that kind of stuff. So there are always two options when you introduce something like religion, culture in a book, which is that you can assume that people know what you're talking about and not explain anything and just let the story run. Or you can take a minute and explain every single little thing. And the difference between those approaches is you're saying this book is for people, I assume my reader doesn't know anything about this, ergo it's not a book for, in this case, people who are familiar with the Jewish faith. Or you can say I'm writing this book for people who are familiar with the Jewish faith, and it's more of an insider writing. I could go off on a TED talk about the differences between those approaches and what it means and what it represents culturally to write in two different ways. Well, here's what I will say. The opening of this particularly takes the second approach, which is that there's a lot of Jewish food, words, holidays, religion, and very, very little of it, if any of it, is like explained in detail. So if you don't have any clue about Jewish religion, faith, etc., you're kind of a little bit lost because there are untranslated words on the page and you're trying to kind of get everything by context clues, which is fine. You can do that if the world is adequately described. Here's the problem. When the entire opening fourth of the book is like that, and then on top of that, we have all of this pseudo introduction to things that clearly happened in the first book that are never explained. So there's references to past characters who are not on the page, whose personalities we're supposed to know, past events that we did not see happen and are not explained in full, and just like past things and character development and things that you don't know. Add that on top of the religious stuff not explained to people like me who don't know what I'm talking about. And then the book uses flashbacks. So there are random flashbacks spaced throughout the book. It is dual POV, and it goes back and forth between Hannah and Blue in flashbacks as well. Like back to when they're like 6 years old. So an already confusing opening where you feel very unsettled and you are just trying to learn who these characters are and where this story is taking place and what is happening. And there is nowhere to stand, because the second you feel like you've gotten your hands into who this family member is, it goes into a flashback. Or the second you're like, oh, this is what this Jewish holiday is all about. It introduces like a whole story about a thing you never saw happen. And I spent the entire opening of this book going, there's just nowhere to stand. Like I can't find anywhere or anything to figure out. And because it opens with these holidays and all of the family is there, it introduces you to a whole host of characters who are not actually important to the story. Some of them show up again later, but a lot of them just kind of come in and out. And I was like, am I supposed to know these people from the first book? Is that why we're doing this? Why am I learning all of these cousins' names if they're just gonna leave after the holidays and not come back? It's literally like you can't tell where to put your eyeballs down. Can't get a hold on anything. Then we come to a secondary problem, which is that Blue is not particularly likable. And his reason for acting poorly to basically everybody that he encounters, Hannah, his parents, his siblings, his cousins, is that he was treated poorly by Cass and the people who lived there who like bullied him when he was younger. And that has turned him into a very surly person. And he just like becomes that person again whenever he comes home, and it's why he doesn't like to be there. I understand that. I get that trauma. But at the same time, when Blue is trying to say to Hannah, I love you, I want to be together, and I don't feel any basis for any reason he would want to stay here. He doesn't want to be here. And I'm really struggling to see anything past like lust in his relationship with Hannah at the beginning. I was just like, you're actively telling her that you probably won't stay and you hate it here and you don't want to be here and everyone here is awful, but you love her and you want to try to be together even though she has expressly told you that Kerrigan's is her life and she doesn't want to leave. So then I'm just like, okay, on top of the fact that I can't figure out the world, I can't figure out the characters, I'm very, very confused why I am supposed to be rooting for the two of you to get back together when the problems that broke you up in the first place, they're not even not resolved. They might not be resolvable. Like if you both want different things from your life, that's fine. Go do those things. Why are we doing this dates thing to get her to take you back? You don't want to come back. I don't get it. And then there is the way that all, and I do mean every single one of the characters talks. Every single one of them talks like they have just received their PhD in clinical psychology and are trying to unpack either their own or the other person's neuroses. There are big words. No one talks like this. And even if we do have, as humans, moments where we are very insightful about other people's personalities or our own shortcomings or whatever, we don't talk like that all the time. And every character does it. I felt like outside of a few different personality quirks, which basically are, some are surlier than others, right? They all talk like that. Big words, big like metaphysical concepts, you know, basically giving each other therapy all the time, but not in a like, well, what do you think about that? Like, let me explain to you why you had that reaction. Which I'm pretty sure if therapists did that regularly, none of us would go to therapy because it's just us being told what is wrong with us in very big words it would just be annoying, I think. And I thought, okay, like, you know, these are people who are trying to show each other that they've grown up since the last time they saw each other. So they're kind of like trying to show off their emotional growth, but it never stops. And I'm not sure there's much emotional growth to show for it. It's just, I am a surly person. Here's why you are surly. Thank you. Moving on. Finally, I do want to just briefly address the queer representation. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning, but Blue's journey to go on is to realize that he is demisexual, which is on the ace spectrum. And for him, he feels no sexual attraction unless he has a friendship with someone. And in that case, he has very, very lusty feelings for Hannah. Very, very much. The way that this is set up, though, is, remember, Blue and Hannah have basically been in love with each other since they were children. And it ends up being one of those things, and this is, you know, it shows up in hetero romances, it's just a romance thing where, like, you have always been the one for me, you are the only one for me, and I have never loved anyone else in my life. And that's not necessarily directly related to being demisexual. It kind of comes up because Hannah's the same way, right? She identifies as straight and it's only ever been Blue for her. She's never been in love with anyone else. She's never slept with anyone else but Blue. But Blue basically is just like, yeah, because I'm so close friends with you, you know, you're the only person I've ever felt sexual attraction for. It feels like in some ways he's saying that he was limited in his feelings by this friendship and this love for Hannah than a way that is directly related to his sexuality. So basically the other reason I felt weird is because it's kind of used as the reason he got bullied growing up, because he was different than the other boys because he didn't feel sexual attraction in the same way, and so he like pretended he was gay for a while until he fell in love with Hannah. And so it's basically just used as like, this is why he was bullied, is because he's demi. I was like, okay. This is why he was bullied, and this is why he can't love anyone other than Hannah. Okay. This video is so much longer than I meant it to be, but I just could not believe, as this book was going on and on and on, just how many of the elements made me so confused. And obviously I don't want to spoil anything, but it is a romance novel, and I will say that I was moderately surprised on the resolution, because the way that Hannah and Blue acted around each other for like 85% of the book felt so unhealthy to me, and I was just like, please don't get back together. It is for never and always. They are never ever getting back together. Separate. And I mean, it's a romance novel, so I knew that wasn't going to happen. So the only reason that this book didn't get like 1 star and I gave it 2 was because in the end I was like, oh, that was like a decent way to end that didn't feel like somebody's life got completely wrecked because their view of the future up until like the last 30 seconds of the book felt so different. But the flashbacks did not need to be there. They did not add anything to the story but confusion. The fact that we were constantly being referenced back to events in Season of Love, and there was definitely context missing that I didn't understand because I hadn't read it, because I didn't know that I had to. The way that people talked and acted around each other, I just really couldn't find. Miriam and Noelle are interesting, and I think if they were the center of the book I would feel more kindly towards them, but they kind of, you know, just kind of circulate around Hannah and Blue in this story, so maybe their book is great, but this one was just not for me. The way that it was constructed, the way that it was written, the love story, the family story, it's not for me. And I tried. I wanted this to be so good. But I finished it and I did it, and I made a really long review for you because for some reason people seem to really like my ranty reviews. So I hope this was enjoyable. If you want to try this book out for yourself, or you want to check out Seasons of Love first, yes, check out Seasons of Love first. Read that one. And then maybe try this one out, because again, this book is out. Even though I read an arc, it is out there in the world now, and you can form your own opinion. This is but my own personal feelings, but I definitely will not be reading Seasons of Love, even though I thought that Miriam and Noelle were interesting, because the writing style here is just not for me. So I hope my next book is better for me, which may mean it is less entertaining for you, but I would like a really nice, sweet book to end my semester with. So here's hoping. Thanks, guys. Bye.